Hello, if you can hear my voice, my dear, I think I've succeeded in encouraging you to learn more about international law. And if that's the case, I can imagine two possibilities. First, this is your first time discovering IntlLaw Academy and you've just started watching one of our videos. Or second, you've seen my previous video and I managed to encourage you to come back, revisit, and spend more time with the Academy. And honestly, my dear, that makes me really proud of myself. But for you, dear, who's hearing my voice for the very first time and watching our Academy's videos, look up to the top right corner of the screen, right there, my dear. If you want to know more about who I am and what I talk about, you can watch the first few minutes of that video, get to know me better, and if you like, join us on this journey. You can also find the previous videos of mine in my playlist. My name is Banu, and I'm happy and honoured to be here today representing the IntlLaw Academy educational videos. Well, my sweet one, we've walked together through the soft morning light of our beautiful discipline, hand in hand with history, wrapped in the gentle memories of empires and peace tables, of ancient codes and shattered swords. We've glimpsed how international law was born, not in silence, but in hope and heartbreak. And now, perhaps it is time to take the next step on our journey. Before we dive into the world of philosophy, of monism, of dualism, of mighty theories and gentle doubts, I think we must pause and breathe in the essence of what international law truly is. Because, my darling, to understand its soul, we must see it not alone, but in conversation, in dialogue, in contrast and in conflict. Yes, the first step into theory is to understand how international law stands beside its earthly sibling, domestic law. What is this relationship really? Are they strangers? Are they lovers? Do they walk in harmony or wrestle in the dark? If we understand this, then when the philosophers speak, we will not be lost. We will hear their voices clearly. We will know the ground we stand on. So come, let's take this next step. Let's explore international law in its relationship with domestic law. My sweet listener, imagine a world with two heartbeats. One that pulses within the borders of a single state, and one that echoes across oceans, above borders, among nations. These are the twin realms of law, domestic and international. One governs a country's streets, its schools, its courts. The other reaches out like starlight, touching treaties, human rights, the laws of war and peace. And for generations, jurists, philosophers, and judges have asked, how do these two worlds speak to one another? Do they embrace or do they clash? Is one superior? Can they coexist? Let's walk together through their story of theory and practice, of unity and conflict, and see what truth might rise from the dialogue. Let's begin simply, my dear, by knowing what we're talking about. Domestic law is the law within a country. Its constitution, its parliament's acts, and its courts' rulings. It is crafted by the state for its people. It governs everything from traffic rules to civil rights. Think of it as the language a nation speaks to itself. International law, on the other hand, is the law between states and increasingly beyond them. It governs treaties, warfare, the oceans, space, human rights, trade and diplomacy. Its voice is collective, shaped by agreements, customs, principles and practice. They are different systems, but are they separate worlds? Let's look deeper. Let us lay their bones side by side. As to the sources, domestic law is born in legislation, judicial decisions, and constitutions. It often has a clear source of authority. International law has its roots in treaties, customary international practices, and general principles of law recognized by civilized nations. And sometimes in the moral conscience of humanity itself. Global institutions like the United Nations, the World Trade Organization, and the International Committee of the Red Cross help shape and codify these norms, acting as bridges between international agreements and domestic adoption. As to the principles, domestic law seeks order, justice, public welfare within a state, and international law seeks peace, cooperation, and dignity among states and peoples. As to the subjects, in domestic law, the subjects are citizens, companies, and the state itself. In classical international law, only states were subjects. But today, individuals, organizations, even multinational corporations are creeping into its light. And as to the enforcement lies a great difference. Domestic law has police, courts and prisons. It has the teeth of enforcement. International law, it is softer. It depends on states choosing to comply or being shamed if they do not. Sometimes it has courts like the International Court of Justice or the International Criminal Court, but it often leans on diplomacy, reciprocity, and the haunting memory of past wars. Yet despite these differences, there is a whisper of similarity. Both seek to bind power with principle. And in practice, many domestic courts engage in a dialogue with international law, citing it as persuasive authority to guide interpretations of constitutional rights and duties. This judicial dialogue enriches both worlds. Now, my love, let us fly into theory, the land of ideas where legal philosophers dwell. Imagine two great camps. Monists believe that international and domestic law are not two systems but one, a unified legal order. For them, when international law speaks, it echoes into domestic law naturally. It doesn't need translation, it flows like water into every national cup. But monism is itself divided. There is international law monism, which says international law is supreme. It can override national law, especially when human dignity or peace is at stake. This idea is often linked to Hans Kelsen, that towering jurist of Vienna. He believed in a Grundnorm, a basic norm, from which all law, international or domestic, derived its validity. For Kelsen, law was one pyramid, not two towers. Then there is domestic law monism, a rarer flower. Some states say international law is real, yes, but it must pass through domestic gates. It is the Constitution that rules. This view, sometimes echoed by the US, places sovereignty first. Now, the other camp is called dualism. Dualists believe that international and domestic law are separate systems, like two different languages. A treaty signed in Geneva does not change your rights in Berlin or Nairobi unless your parliament ratifies it. This tradition grew in British and Austrian thought, refined by scholars like Heinrich Treipel and Dionisio Anzilotti, and later shaped by the thoughtful Malcolm Shaw, who helped codify and clarify dualism in modern texts. Dualists defend sovereignty fiercely. They say a state is not bound internally by international law unless it chooses to be. And so even a universal treaty may need a domestic passport. We also see today a soft monism or pragmatic dualism emerging, where states and scholars recognize the fluidity and hybrid nature of the relationship, neither rigidly unified nor strictly separate, but adapting depending on context and legal area. Theory is beautiful, my darling, but practice is a more tangled vine. Most states, in truth, live somewhere between monism and dualism. France and the Netherlands lean monist. Treaties can be directly invoked in court. The United Kingdom or Germany are more dualist. International law needs domestic translation. Then there's Nicaragua, rare and exceptional. In its constitution, it declares domestic law superior to international law, a bold stance, and one watched with raised brows in the world's courtrooms. The United States is complex. Treaties are part of the supreme law of the land, but only if they are self-executing, meaning they don't need legislative action to take effect. Otherwise, they remain silent until Congress speaks. We also see customs form, hybrid approaches. Some nations quietly implement international norms through judicial rulings or executive orders, even without formal incorporation. Others treat international judgments as persuasive but not binding. For example, Costa Rica's Salafore frequently applies international human rights law directly. India's Supreme Court cites international treaties even without formal ratification. South Africa's constitution explicitly encourages the use of international law to interpret domestic law. This, my dear, is law in motion, law in negotiation. But now, my dear, let us open the door to a more difficult room, the room of conflict. What happens when international law and domestic law say different things? What happens when a state has ratified a treaty that guarantees freedom, but its own laws still punish dissent? Conflicts of norms emerge. A treaty says one thing, a constitution another. Should international law override? Should the court follow the constitution and risk violating global commitments? Some countries, like Germany, attempt reconciliation, interpreting domestic law to match international law wherever possible. But others hold firm, sovereignty first, they say. Human rights versus state sovereignty is perhaps the sharpest tension. International law might forbid torture, demand fair trials, protect asylum seekers, but a state may resist, claiming security, culture, or constitutional traditions. There are also political challenges. A state may denounce a treaty, withdraw from a court, or simply refuse to comply with international rulings. Enforcement mechanisms are often too weak to respond, and so international law sometimes whispers where it should roar. Conflicts also arise in federal systems where local or regional governments disobey international obligations, or in moments of crisis where international duties are brushed aside in the name of emergency. This, my love, is the real struggle. Not theory, not philosophy, but power and pride. The persistent question is, whose voice carries the law? Yet even within this difficult terrain, many states respond creatively, reforming constitutions, issuing reservations to treaties, or adopting interpretive doctrines to harmonize the conflict. This slow, imperfect dance reflects a legal world striving to hold sovereignty and international responsibility in uneasy balance. And now, my dear friend, as we gently close this chapter of our journey, let us pause and breathe in the quiet wisdom we have gathered. We have wandered through the delicate dance of laws, those written in the heart of a single state, and those whispered across the world's vast tapestry. We have seen that their relationship is not a tale of enemies or conquest, but of conversation, of reaching out with cautious hands, trying to find harmony in a world both divided and united. This story is far from finished. It will grow, twist, and blossom, shaped by the voices of judges, diplomats, thinkers, and you, the listener whose curiosity keeps the flame alive. So let us hold hope close, hope that one day these twin worlds of law will not stumble over each other's shadows, but dance gracefully, each respecting the other's space, yet moving in rhythm toward justice, peace, and the dignity of every soul on this blue planet. And remember this, my dear, law is not just the ink on parchment, nor the echo of gavel strikes. It is the pulse of our shared humanity, fragile, resilient, and endlessly striving to bridge the distance between what is and what ought to be. May we all carry this bridge in our hearts, and may its light never flicker, because in the end, the true power of law lies not in command, but in connection, a quiet force that binds us all, reminding us that despite borders, despite differences, we are part of one world, walking together on the path toward a kinder tomorrow. Well, I must confess, my dear, I thoroughly enjoyed discussing this subject. It was very fascinating, interesting, and amazing, and I hope you have enjoyed accompanying me as well. You are truly a good listener, and I hope I didn't bother you that much. Keep your beautiful mind sharp and take care of yourself, my dear, okay?